Hello, Gwen.
Hello, Delsing.
How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Good, good. Today we're going to talk about your latest article, Aligning with Nature to Embrace Your True Self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah. Well, actually, it might even be more accurate to say aligning with your own true nature to embrace your true self.
Hmm.
It's not so much getting out into the natural world, although that's wonderful, but it's understanding that there really is no separation between you and the natural world. And the way we're designed, the way we are genetically designed, is that we carry the life story of our ancestors, our predecessors, in ourselves. Someone was saying to me, comes from Sarah Payton's work, and she said that, I'm going to read this: our mothers are in every cell of our prefrontal cortex, 12.5% of the brain. So, however you feel about your mom, she's in you, and her mother is in you, and your great grandmother, and so on and so forth, all the way back. So there's no getting away from your genealogy in terms of how that is reflected in how you embrace, how you interpret the world, and create your own story.
Hmm.
So one of the points that I wanted to make in this article is that there is a natural flow. There's a natural source of information, of emotional resonance, all kinds of things that are already built into us. And when we acknowledge that, we can get energy from it. We can get information. We can get wisdom. We can get sort of inspiration, strength, all kinds of things from understanding that we are a product of the collective history
Hmm.
of our lineage, as well as just the collective unconscious, that the connection we have to everything and everybody. So part of the point that I want to make in this article is that sometimes we just take at face value the impressions that we get from the culture, that we have to present ourselves in a certain way. Our bodies have to look a certain way for us to be perceived as beautiful. Our physical features have to be organized in such a way, and we need all these things, these products, and these procedures, and all these exercise and diet routines in order to get closer to that ideal that we want to attain. And in a sense that it struck me so deeply that in this pursuit we get hollowed out. Who we really are gets hollowed out and discarded, and that made me incredibly sad to think about that. Um, how we subject ourselves to that process in order to be accepted, loved, fitting in, thought of as valuable, beautiful, attractive, desirable, and all those things. Um, so I'm talking about more than body positivity. I think it's body recognition. It's to understand that the body is a living record of who we are. It's the story of who we are. And I'm connecting that a little bit with mythology, in the sense that mythology comes out of the body experience, and it illustrates and informs and gives power to the body experience. It's not meaningless. It's got incredible depth of meaning that can be mined and can be resourced for our own stories and for our own experience, to make it richer for each of our own life journey. A phrase came to me that really resonated with me, and it was, I'm recovering the substance of who I am. Yeah.
It's lovely. Yeah. And that's an interesting, challenging thing to parse apart. The self that wants acceptance, the self that wants to look a certain way, versus the self that is. And how do you, or perhaps how do you help someone? How can that be parsed out?
Well, it depends on the individual and how they're approaching their, the conflict in their life or the dissonance. But coming back to oneself, just to even notice what is my stance in the world? Like, am I leaning too far forward? Am I trying to connect with people and coming out of myself that way? Am I withdrawing? I don't want any part of this. Or am I even leaning against? In other words, am I looking for conflict to define who I am?
Mm-hmm.
And so we try to identify where we're doing any of these things to see, what is the core issue there, and to how to return to this stance of neutrality, not neutrality in terms of indifference, but neutrality in terms of I am rooted in myself, in who I am, and I am taking in information, and I have a sense of discrimination, but not, I hate that word. It's more like discernment of what I'm perceiving, and I'm sitting with it. I'm allowing my internal wisdom to rise up and inform me. I'm not knee-jerk reacting to whatever's going on,
Right.
just to stay, in the conversation or to stay above water. Whatever I feel, I need to answer. So it's a stepping back. It's a stepping back. It's an reorganizing oneself in one's centered and rootedness, and then responding, and then seeing how things feel. And all of this happens in the body. Of course, it does. It's the body mind, but it's the body. If you study polyvagal theory, it's 80% information coming from the body to the brain, 20% going down. So the body is pretty important, and it's really a truthful mechanism. It's not going to lead you astray. The interpretation of whatever sensations or feelings come up can lead us astray, because they're already working in a framework. They're already working in a reference point. But if we take the energy as pure energy and we just allow ourselves to be with it, we're going to know the truth of it. We're going to understand it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know the times where you and I have worked together, it's always enjoyable, but the moments where you or any other person has said, where do you feel that in your body? That to me is a hard question, and it makes me realize how much I'm in my mind sometimes
Sure.
and not aware of, okay, well, it's in my chest. But
Mhm.
sometimes I say that just to let them get off the hook. You know,
Yeah, just
so
to
tuning into the body is hard.
throw your coach a bone, huh?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And we all do that. We all want to look good in the eyes of our therapist or our coach, at least initially. But a good coach will watch out for that, and that's transference and countertransference, all that stuff. We're going to be on the alert for not allowing that to happen, because it ultimately doesn't serve the client or the coach, frankly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
What was
tuning
the
into the
question?
body, tuning into the body.
Was
Where
there
is
was there a question in there? I'm sorry. Oh, you were talking about how hard it is to land in the body and kind of know what
that's right.
that's all about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can do that in different ways. I mean, if you're not comfortable in the body, or it doesn't feel safe, because there's been too much trauma or too much association, as soon as you drop down to the body, you're starting to feel, agitated or very uncomfortable. We can approach those things differently. We can say, well, pick up this glass. How does this glass feel in your hands?
Mm.
Hmm. And how does this shirt feel on your shoulders? How do your glasses feel on your nose? So you're beginning to get some sensitivity to, okay, I can do that.
Mhm.
And then we can examine where the resistance is. If it really comes up, and we can start talking to that. We can say, well, what does the resistance want us to know? And we may not characterize it as resistance. That might be sound kind of judgmental, or what is happening? Like, what is the message of what's happening? What does the body want you to know? And
Mhm.
what do you want to tell your body? What do so that you start to develop a dialogue in a way, or if someone is comfortable, with it. I could ask you, how does that thought feel? How does that thought feel in your throat?
Mm-hmm.
Does it choke you up a little bit? Does it give you more space there? Is there any sensation? Is there a lack of sensation? If there's a lack of sensation, let's lean into that. Let's see if we
Mm-hmm.
can understand that, if we can create a dialogue with that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. Very interesting. And
know.
it seems like it takes time to settle into the body. The body is here in the mind can be so quick, but the body is in time and space, and tuning into the body and the messages of the body. It's like you have to enter the room and get used to the space of the body and the signals, because our mind is so quick to lay on the body it's many judgments and feelings. I'm not thin enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not this, so the body this, the body that. Like, we have so many critiquings of our own body, as opposed to it just being a useful tool we get around in the physical world with. We have all these opinions about our body.
Yeah, of course. And one of the things that I learned in doing some somatic work is that the body, you have to get quiet. You have to get a little bit quiet and attentive to what's really going on, and then just start to name it. Understand that the nervous system is responding to the environment, but it's also holding experience that it hasn't been able to process. Um, so it's looking for relief. Your system is looking for recognition and relief.
Mm.
So when you start to turn your attention toward the body sometimes has a lot to say. It
Hmm.
wants to be communicated with, so it can stand down, so it can get to a place of relief rather than being surging with hormones that are telling constantly telling us there's danger. The anxiety is really
Hmm.
what I'm referring to there.
You're talking about our ancestors being in our body quite
Mhm.
literally, and that's a really intriguing idea, that our mothers in here, our grandmother. Say more about that, please.
Yeah, well, if I think about our grandmother, because we have the same grandmother on
Yep,
our mother's
and
side,
same mother.
that we have actually both our grandmothers fled Ukraine
Mm.
during the Russian Revolution under dire circumstances. They fled for their lives because they were part of a Mennonite community or colony that was brought into Russia by Catherine the Great, and they were given or maybe I think it was Catherine, to farm the land and teach the Russians how to farm the land, and they became very prosperous, and there was a lot of jealousy about their success. And when the revolution came, there were bandits who were roaming the countryside, calling themselves anarchists, and they would come into the community and they'd slaughter everybody, and they would take their possessions and their land and everything, their animals, their crops, everything, and destroy them, just burn them to the ground. So you can imagine living through that would be pretty terrifying. And so many people in the Mennonite community left Russia at that time and came to Canada, which is where our ancestors came, to um, northern Saskatchewan, where the Canadian National Railway was giving away free land, and not knowing the culture, not knowing the language, they had
Not
this
anymore, by the way. They're not doing that anymore. No more free land.
no more free land. And also, our ancestors aren't, most of them are not farming anymore either.
Yeah,
I mean, our cousins and our immediate family.
yeah. In northern Saskatchewan, you don't
And
want to go looking for land there. Anyways, it's very cold.
most of them, some of them are still there and carrying on the tradition, though. But anyway, so for myself to have that sort of embedded in my genetic code, even though I live in modern times, and I have no threat of famine or marauders or anything else, um, or no reason to feel insecure about moving my household to another house. But in the last few years, I've moved a couple of times, and immediately I feel the anxiety. Oh, it's like there's a marauder in the room. It's like I'm starting to feel that sense of danger that's far out of proportion to what's going on. And I know that that has to do with what I've inherited from my ancestral history.
Mhm.
So, and it's not a big thing. It's not like I break down and I'm completely frozen. I can totally function through all of that, but I'm aware that those feelings are there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's, if we watch, a nature program, and we watch apes in the jungle with their babies running around the jungle, and these notions are easy to kind of go, oh yeah, well that's obvious, yeah, that there would have a lineage of knowledge, that we would understand this dichotomy, or this relationship. But when we look at ourselves, it just feels like I feel, and I think we feel very singular. Like the past is kind of,
Mm.
we can barely remember when there wasn't cell phones, let alone, roaming bandits. So it's built into us the way a gorilla, child learns how to survive in the wood, in the jungle.
Yeah, there are a lot of people working on in this area of intergenerational trauma and understand it very well, and it can be investigated by anybody
Hmm.
now. But I'm also very captured by the idea of how mythology came into being. And one of the points that I'm making in the article is that we kind of made the word myth into, that's a myth. In other words, that's a lie, or that's a made up thing. That's an old wives' tale or an urban legend or something like that. But mythology, these are the overarching stories that come out of human experience, which it happens in the body, doesn't it? So myth is very, very a very interesting product of our existence, in the sense that it becomes symbolic language, it becomes metaphoric language that informs us in ways that literal descriptions and language don't do. And so there's a richness to exploring what our own mythology is, um, what energies we're drawn to, what kinds of people we're drawn to, or situations, or what keeps happening to us, over and over again, patterns of behavior that can be understood as archetypal energies that we are containing, or that we are expressing, that are coming through us. And that's a big part of the work I love to do with people is, let's find out what your personal mythology is. Let's find out what are the forces that you're attracting and that you are interacting with and that you're playing with, and what do they mean to you?
Hmm. It's very interesting too. Coaching is so subtly, specifically different from therapy or counseling, in that it brings in the physical world so much more. Like it's, okay, what are you going to do with that? Okay, how are you going to do that? When you go to the office on Monday and you want to talk to your boss, what exactly are you going to say? How are you feeling it in your body? What are you going to do with your body? And it's very tangible. And I like how this topic feels so tangible in a certain way. You can access your heritage. You can access what you were given over generations right now with what you're walking around with. I
Oh,
like
yes, it's all here.
it.
It's all present with us now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you spoke of going to work or interacting with family, we can also identify archetypal energies in people we relate to.
Mm.
They're we see those archetypal images or the energies coming through people. Like we know someone who's, well, the archetype for the coach oftentimes is a wounded healer. The person who understands the problems of the client because we worked through them. We've encountered them and we worked through them. So we have an understanding and also humility and respect for our clients because we understand the pain that they've gone through or the struggles they're having to make a change and so on. And we go through life at different stages. We can even sort of track that. Somebody asked me the other day, well, what are the archetypes that show up in your life? And I said, well, I think I started off as a babe in the woods, and then I became a servant, and then I went through a period of indenture servitude. And then I came out of that into a new understanding. Maybe now I'm in the crone stage, where the wise woman, or whatever, however you want to characterize that. Well, of course, mother is an archetype, wife is an archetype, daughter, granddaughter, all these things have their own energy. So
Mhm.
when we are looking at ourselves through an archetypal lens, I might say to you, what kind of energy shows up when I say wounded healer to you? What is that spark in your mind? How does that resonate for you? Or maybe it doesn't.
Mhm.
Or hero archetype, or lover, or magician, or wizard, or all these wonderful things that we see in the stories that we are captivated by, like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, and all these sort of really big, epic, um, sweeping sagas that have characters that we identify with,
Yeah.
or people we know. Do we all have a Darth Vader in our lives? Do we all have a Luke Skywalker? Do we all have a Frodo, or a Gollum, or all these things that they speak to us in certain ways and inform energies that we understand and relate to.
Mhm. And I think as we are drawn to a character, we are drawn to the archetype of that character for a reason. I think
Mhm.
growing up, my our father was a rescuer, I would say, and I very much took on the lead role as a rescuer in my life, and now I'm in the evolution of the rescuer. It's not like I can erase that from my history or my training from my father, but there's an evolution of a rescuer, which once again re-engages with the authority of the individual you're working with or being with, or you're no longer rescuing, you're in a new role, but the origin story of the rescuer remains. So it's like we all have this history that we're getting in touch with, so we understand why we are where we are, but then we move forward with the evolved version of that, hopefully.
Yeah, and it's a way of claiming ourselves again, recovering the substance of who we are
Hmm. Yeah.
through these connections and relationships. It makes me think of more archetypal sort of representations. Um, the trickster, for instance, and the orphan. And, some of them are really classical, sort of very easy to identify in the broader picture. And then we get very specific and how we can live out these different energies, many different energies in a lifetime. And when you're in your wizard um, personification, where you're making magic happen, whatever it is,
Mm.
and you're perceived that way, and you're drawing different energies to you than when you're feeling like the little match girl who's
Hmm.
uh, in the rain on the sidewalk selling soggy matches. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like there are so many ways to express ourselves through these metaphorical language.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Gwen.
Hmm. Well, thank you, Delsing.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.